Hey, this is Rebecca Dirks with PremierGuitar.com. We're here talking to Jsa Satriani about the gear you're going to be using here on your Wormhole tour. We're going to kick it off looking at the pedals here. You've got your signature pedals and some others. You want to kind of walk us through what each of them does?
Sure, yeah. Signal chain really starts at the big bad wah, and pay no attention to the true bypass box right next to it. I'll get to that later. We kind of go over to the Proctavia, and I should point out that besides the octave, the wah-wah pedal and the delays, pretty much everything is used maybe for one song, maybe two at best for little cameo appearances. So the Proctavia comes on, I believe, just for a solo in Crystal Planet. The chorus pedal I use just a little bit in Crystal Planet, a little bit for the outro of Wind in the Trees. The delays are always on. The Roger Mayer Voodoo Vibe is used for a solo in a song called Pyrrhic Victoria. The whammy pedal is used for the outro chorus on Revelation, and that's it. So they take up a lot of real estate, but they're just little ear candy pedals. I keep the Satchurator and the Ice 9 Overdrive there just in case I change my mind about how I want to work with my gain levels. And then down here, the Marshall foot pedal there it's actually got 6 little stages in there, and you see the hastily drawn and placed duct tape with funny letters and numbers on it. This reflects the fact that we've got some prototype JVM410 heads with us, and every other day I make some changes and I put some letters and numbers there to remind me what they're actually doing. But it looks like during the show I'm using 4 settings more often than not. And then finally back to that true bypass box. That was made by Ben Fargen, the amazing amp builder out of Sacramento, California. Great guitarist in his own right as well. And then Ben made that box for me mainly because we have one rack mount effect. It's an old Digitech Super Harmony machine, and I just use it for the song Why. And it's one of those pedals or rack effects you don't really want to be sending your guitar signal through unless it's absolutely necessary. So that takes it out of the chain, but for the song Why, it gives me this unusual E minor harmony. I can show that to you. It's hiding behind the amps.
So over here we've got the Digitech Super Harmony machine. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Right. For some reason they call this thing a 33B as well as a Super Harmony machine. I don't know why. This goes back to late 1980s. I used it for a vocal performance on a song called Strange on the Flying in a Blue Dream album. And it's got some funny little programs where you can pick a key or a chord. In this case, we're in E-flat minor, and whatever note you play in the key of E-flat minor, it harmonizes it with notes that it believes supports E-flat minor. So it's not scalar, it's built on chord harmonies. And I wound up using it for the song Why that came out on the Extremist album. And you really can't play that song unless you have this thing. So luckily I have 2 of them. They're still working, and we keep them back here safe and sound, and they're sitting on top of a Furman power conditioner. And all the heads go into that to keep the power regulated.
I see you're using the Voodoo Lab pedal powers. What kind of cables are you using to hook these up?
Well, Mike Manning, my tech, makes all the cables himself using the Planet Waves gear. And that really helps us out a lot because we keep changing things, or I should say I keep changing things, and he's got to react very quickly to pedals being moved around. And using the cables that way allows him to customize the length, so it just makes everything a little bit more tidy. This is the JVM410. It's these 3 heads are actually clones of each other. These are modified by Santiago Alvarez, a head engineer for Marshall, also a really good guitar player. And he's been working on these things for me for over a year. We've kept the basic design of the 410, which is you've got 4 channels, 3 modes for each channel. So you do get a lot of flexibility. Any working guitarist out there is going to love the fact that it's pretty much got the history of Marshall tones in one head. And as I said before, I'm using about 4 different settings through this show at the moment. So I'm using a clean channel here for its clean tone, down here for sort of like an overdriven 800 tone, and then 2 settings in this overdrive channel here. Number 1, right now you can see the red lights on. That's, my gig is mainly playing melodies and solos full time, so I don't do a whole lot of rhythm work during the show. So that's a pretty extreme setting right there. But what Santiago was able to do with the existing 410 was to get rid of a lot of the inherent compression that was a little bit more popular a couple of years ago. And so now it's a very ultra punchy, super dynamic amplifier. He got it way more quiet, and we got rid of the reverbs, and we put in 4 noise gates, one for each channel. We reshaped the resonance and the presence controls so they would be a lot more friendly for me, basically. I didn't want the presence to be so harsh, and I wanted the resonance to be a little bit more flexible, let's say, not so overwhelming in that 100 hertz area. And other than that, I'm using just one head during the show and 2 cabinets. We keep a half stack for guests. John Petrucci was playing through that one the other night in New York City. And a spare head as always, just in case something gets finicky with this one.
What tubes are in those?
These are, I believe, I don't think that we changed anything about it. They're EL34s, 12AX7s. Yeah, I don't think in the last 12 months we ever tried anything else like 6L6s or KT88s or anything like that.
So,
I think we kept the EL34s for the whole thing.
So are you working on this to be a signature Marshall in the future?
We hope in about a year we would be in retail.
Excellent. And let's talk about the cabinets. Which ones are you using?
These are, now, as before on tours I used to travel with 75 watters and 20 watters and 25s and 30s. And I finally figured out it's a better idea to go with your straight ahead 1960B cabinets and tune the heads, so to speak, so that wherever you go in the world, you're going to find this cabinet. This is the most prevalent cabinet for Marshall. And so I've been really liking this cabinet a lot more than in past where I had a softer sound. I think especially with the addition of keyboards now, we're a 5-piece band, these cut a lot more, so I do like them.
And what speakers do you have in them?
They should be 80-watt speakers.
And what are you miking the cabs with?
That changes every day. And I haven't, today is different. What do we got here? Well, I don't know. I wouldn't touch them. I think Russell is always looking for 2 things. He's looking for width and he's looking for bite. And so he's going to mix that from time to time during the show.
And so over here we have just a couple things for your acoustic rig, right?
That's right. Tuner, the wet reverb pedal, and the radial DI, and the Ibanez Jsa Acoustic just runs right into that. We use that for the song Andalusia. We have my little PV Mini Colossal. This we use only for the harp mic, for the harp solo in Big Bad Moon. And I believe that takes the direct out.
Let's look at the guitars you're using.
This is one of the 2 prototypes that I had when developing the JS 2400. So 24 frets instead of the usual 22, extra cutaway, new single coil style pickup in here by DiMarzio, and a Mojo here in the bridge position. And it pretty much functions like the JS 1000s, except in this particular case, besides all the stuff I mentioned, the body is alder. It's got a Babinga stripe in the neck, and it's orange. I wanted to get it to look like this 73 Camaro that was painted in a Hugger orange color. And we decided not to put in the stripe, the white stripe. But it came out looking a little bit like Halloween candy. So we just figured not many people would want to buy an orange guitar. But because it's alderwood, which is a little different than what I usually use, it has just maybe 2% extra, maybe warmth to it or something. Doesn't cut as well, but it's a little fatter sounding. And it was done down at the LA Custom Shop. I kind of brought it along just because I still wanted to try to figure out if I really liked it. But I think we made the right decision in going with sticking with basswood and taking out the Babinga stripe. I think it ultimately is a bit more musical sounding. The production models are, and this one will just wind up being an oddity eventually.
Now, why did you go with the rail style pickup instead of a regular humbucker?
Well, the problem is that I've always found with 24 fret guitars is that when you take this whole ensemble here of pickup and pickup ring and you put it here, it actually winds up moving your prime position back towards the bridge, not where it was originally placed. Let's say if you bought a Les Paul or something like that. And the tone suffers. And that neck pickup sound, I think, is so important for all guitar players. I certainly use it a lot in my music. And I just thought, well, I'm not going to give up that sound just to get 2 extra frets, you know.
Sure.
So I brought it to those guys. What could we do to solve that problem? And what we come up with is the realization that you really don't need a whole lot of wood after that last fret. Usually they put in, you know, a generous amount, the same amount as you would have for another fret being there. And then you add the ring to this, and this whole section would be back here. Completely different tone. So this allows us here to get this pickup here right where a humbucker's main range of picking up the sound would be. And it really makes the pickup function incredibly well. It sounds like a high-powered Strat, and you can, you know, dial it down and put the high-pass filter in there, and you do get a really beautiful Strat tone. So here we are with my main guitar. It's the Production JS2400. This is my favorite axe, and did a lot of work on the new album with this guitar. And as you can see, it's pretty much like a JS1000, except we've had the new cutout, the extra 2 frets, the change in the pickup, and but all the other cool things that make the JS guitar sound great are in there. And the neck is just super playable. It's just so nice. It's a great combination of vintage and modern stylings. And then over here, I couldn't do without the JS1200. This one also, this 1200 is a bit modified because we put a Sustainiac pickup in here. And I use that on a couple of songs on the new record. Live, I'm using it for, let's see, the song Why. Using it just in regular single coil tone. The Sustainiac guys, they make a really nice single coil tone, so that's why we went with that over the Sustainer. And then Wind in the Trees, a solo, actually uses the Sustainer, and you can pick sustain in the low, mids, or high frequencies. And that's fun to play with. It's really great, very liberating. And of course the neck and the body, the wood, look at those chunks, look at that. That makes a guitar worth playing right there. You know, it's identical to the 2400, and so the playability is there, and it's the same neck that's on the 1000s. It's a great guitar, and it's beautifully red. This was a prototype that we started working on this guy maybe 6-7 years ago, and none of them ever really worked out. And then Steve Blucher sent me some new pickups from DiMarzio, and suddenly the guitar came to life. I used it on the Experience Hendrix tour last March. We put a maple neck on here, and right now it's sort of like a backup live radio show guitar, and it's become Mike Keneally's warm-up guitar. Even though he doesn't play guitar on tour, he warms up on guitar and then goes out and plays keyboard, so go figure that out. Anyway, this is a beautiful color. This was going to be the JS1200 color until we all decided red was better. But I think blue is coming. Just recently tuned the beautiful Jsa Acoustic. This guitar, you know, what we tried to do with this guy was to make a beautiful sounding acoustic guitar. We didn't put any extra holes anywhere, so it's a fully functional acoustic guitar. And then hidden in there is the Eclipse System by Fishman, sorry. And it's really great on stage. It allows me to get that total acoustic tone and playability without worrying about the crazy feedback and the squeals and all that. And it's so black. How much blacker can you get than that? Look, we can see ourselves in there. Look at that.
Yeah.
You look marvelous.
So how does what we just saw differ from what you use with Chickenfoot?
I'm trying to think. What was the last gig I did with Chet? Well, in general, it's pretty much the same, I gotta say. I used the white 2400 behind you for a few songs on the last set of Chickenfoot gigs. They were kind of spaced out by a couple of months, so they were kind of odd. I was toying around with that Overdrive 1 channel in a different way. Like the very last gig we did, I believe I turned the amp up much louder and turned the gain down by half to see what it would be like to drive the power amp more and use the preamp distortion less. And it was a lot of fun. We were playing up in, or down in Cabo Wabo, so it was a very small environment. But it was really nice to hear the amp open up. It's funny, you get rid of the buzz, but you get more sustain. But it sounds clearer, so it sounds more vintage-like. Marshalls always have that ability, which is amazing about their design. But it is loud. I mean, you're talking 114 dB starting point, you know what I mean? So it's truly rock music right at that point. And then I think on the very last show we did, or maybe it was Palm Springs or something, I had just taken receipt of the very first 410 that was modified, and I did a show with that, and I really loved it as well. Because the earlier tours I had no noise gate, and although you don't really hear the hiss like on the live DVD at all, you do hear it on the stage. It's sort of coming back at you from the monitor, so it can be a bit disconcerting. Speakers were, I think we had one 1960 cabinet, and maybe we had some others. Mike, did we change that? We were using 25 watters, yeah. But I was using the Crunch 2 channel for a lot of that, which is a little bit more scooped. I just had this feeling that if I scooped my sound out a little bit, there'd be more room for Sam's vocal. So he's got a huge voice, so you don't want to crowd it. And that, I think, allowed for the guitar to be louder in the mix, leaving a hole for Sam. But I think that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you very much. And we really appreciate you taking some time to show us around the rig today.
Thank you.
All right. This is Rebecca Dirks with PremierGuitar.com.